You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Seventh Sanctum with Kerry Ann, only on Parasearch UK Radio.
Hello, welcome, good evening. You're listening to Kerry Ann. This is Seventh Sanctum and we are on Parasearch UK Radio. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. We almost didn't make it in time because we've been having a good old natter just before we come live on air. I am joined this evening with Kerry Greenaway, and tonight we have a fantastic guest who is often in the chat rooms talking to you guys as well on previous shows. But tonight we're being joined with Ashley. So can you both say hello?
Hiya.
Hello.
How are you? Are you having a good day?
Yeah, it's not a bad day. A busy day at work.
Oh, the hoggle job. You know what? No.
Muggle. I think you was going
Muggle,
for there.
That's it. Hoggle. He's out of what's it?
Potter.
Labyrinth. I was going Hoggle.
Hoggle. Yes, that's the labyrinth, isn't it? Sorry, I'm getting confused with my sci-fi things. Not even sci-fi, is it? Fantasy fiction.
Well, welcome, Ashley. Thank you so much for joining us. I bet you're regretting it now.
That's my pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Well, I've had the pleasure of reading up on you today. I mean, what a fascinating and insightful man you are, and a lot of ideas and concepts and theories that you've kind of explored are absolutely amazing. And I'll be honest with you, so much has taken my interest because it's all areas that I really enjoy talking about and looking into. So before we really get into the nitty gritty of everything and the different kind of experiments you've done yourself, I would love to know about you and your first experience within the paranormal. What kind of led you here?
I think my main first experience happened when I was probably around 11 years old. I mean, I lived in a house backed onto a park, and on the opposite side of that park was a big manor house called Chivalry Manor. And me and friends were, because it was abandoned, the manor at the time. Me and some friends were crossing shortcutting across the grounds at one point, and as we was doing so, I kind of felt the sense of being stared at, as if someone was looking at me. And when I looked around up at one of the windows of this manor, I saw like a woman in one of the top windows. And as long as I looked at her, she remained there, and it was like it must have seemed like forever. But that kind of my friend kind of called my name, looked around, and she'd vanished. And I kind of thought that a bit weird. Fast forward a couple of weeks later, we was doing the same thing again. And a similar kind of thing happened again, but this time she was at a lower window, sort of a lot more prominent. But all the time she was doing this, she was kind of motionless and looking out and not really looking at me, but there. And it grasped me from that point forward, and I wanted to know more about it. That inquisitive nature that I've been brought up by my parents sort of like kicked in, and all of a sudden I wanted to know more. And basically I never found out about anything around the manor or anything like that. But I mean, we did kind of like try to investigate at one point, try and get in there, but which you should never do, by the way, obviously. But it never really amounted to anything. And it's one of those events that you just kind of like think, wow, what was all that about? And then that kind of kicked off my interest, and that's when I started reading a lot about paranormal, unknown sort of areas, sort of thing. I liked all the TV shows back then as well, and I'm lucky enough to have parents that are quite good at put you in a position to go and find out information. I remember my mum's a writer and into biology and stuff like that, and my dad's quite logical thinking, mathematics and communications from like BT, stuff like that. So I had quite a good balance when I was being brought up. So that gave me quite a good sort of input into like understanding or looking at things in a certain way.
That's really fascinating. Now, this story in particular, has actually been featured in a book as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. I think it's Paul Adams wrote a book on haunted Stevenage, and it's actually in that book itself.
So, did you speak to Paul Adams and kind of collaborate and put that, or is it actually the story behind the lady in the window? Do you know who she is, or did you end up being inquisitive as you are? Did you find anything about her?
I didn't manage to find out anything about whether there was anything about that. Like I would nowadays. I didn't manage back then. I didn't actually manage to do that. I mean, I know Paul took the story and he put a bit of history, I think, behind the Shrewsbury Manor and put that in his book. But as at that time, I didn't really manage to get into it as deeply as I could have done. And I think as soon as that triggered that fascination in that particular area, I kind of went off. I looked at other aspects and ghosts and trying to understand them and quite a big wide variation on the field.
Okay, so how did you take that and then move forward? Where did you find yourself next experiencing the paranormal and really kind of kickstart your focus and your fascination into what you do now?
Well, it remained all the way into adulthood. I mean, I kept on reading, and it was a TV show came on, I'd watch it. It was always, that fascination was always there, and it always kind of drew me in. I mean, one of the classic ones is when I moved to Coventry with a job, and I met someone and a girl, and I sort of like moved in with her and her mum, and her mum was quite into mediumship, EVPs and things like that. It was like almost, I didn't know that obviously when I got involved with the girl, but at one point I was really massively interested in, because she had like a circle that met at her house. So she was doing tarot cards and mediumship, and they'd done EVPs on old tape machines and stuff like that back then. And I found that massively fascinating. Didn't really do much for my relationship, but it was massively fascinating to me, sort of thing. And that kind of kept me kind of tying over a little bit more. And then when I got to about I think it was about 2005. That's when I first went on my first overnight investigation to Salisbury Guildhall. And me and my girlfriend at the time, different girlfriend, we literally sat there, and she said a girl's name, which I think was Emily, and literally as she finished Emily, our digital camera, which was on the desk in front of us, kind of vibrated across the desk. She bolted and legged out of the room, scared for her life. I couldn't help but try and investigate it. I was trying to find a logical reason. I was trying to find a reason for it. And the guy that was doing the tour, I think it's Paranormal Tours was the company. One of the guys that was doing it, Martin, that was his name. He noticed how fascinated I was in trying to find out a logical reason. He was like, he just said to me, "You need to be doing this more." Ironically, a few years later, he joined my team that I put together and started investigating with me. So from that point forward, I think I was hooked. The overnight investigation, because something happened like that, I was hooked, and I've done overnight investigations probably since then, so 10 plus years now.
Wow. So, I mean, at this point, I want to introduce more Kerry Greenaway, because I know she's sitting there listening away. So from what we've discussed so far, is there anything you want to ask, Kel?
Did it never scare you?
Did it scare me? What? Overnight investigations?
No, any part of it that you came across up to this point. So like when you were, seeing the circles and the tarot and then having those experiences when you were younger, did none of that scare you, or just was it a complete just intrigue?
I think intrigue, yes. I mean, I don't want to sound like like bigging up myself, but I've never been scared by the paranormal, for the simple fact that at the end of the day, it's what fascinates me and what I'm looking for, and I'm looking to find answers and stuff like that. So in my mindset, it's like, it's not something that I can be scared of. I have to go towards it, so to speak, rather than running away from it. So It's never been something that really scared me. And I think, again, linking back into my parents, I think they put that mindset in me that if you want to find out about something, you have to ask questions and investigate it and research it and understand it and all that kind of stuff. So rather than being afraid of something that I didn't understand, I was trying to understand that something that I didn't understand, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely makes sense.
So, I mean, these experiences sound amazing. It kind of sounds like there were kind of foundations to what you do now leading up to this point, because you are quite heavily involved in lots of different I say heavily. You are involved in lots of different types of investigations and researches with different types of investigators, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, I do, yeah.
So, go on, sorry.
Yeah, I like to. I don't know if it's the right way to do it or not, but I like to. I'm not like a focus group or anything like that. I like to get, after my own team sort of like fold, but I didn't fold actually. I closed it down. I like to get involved with different people because I find that everybody's got new ideas and approaches and that kind of stuff, and that's what keeps it turning over a lot, and it helps.
I mean, this is something that me and Kerry Greenaway have discussed before in regards to, if you work with a team continuously, the same team all the time, there becomes a level of expectation and how that can influence a investigation and a level of evidence that you can get as a group, and that it could be nice just to chop and change it a little bit because that changed dynamic in energy, so to speak, of a group could change, enhance, or maybe not in some cases, because we have been in the company of someone who's managed to make something feel really flat, and that can have an influence on the night's proceedings and how an investigation can turn out. So do you think that is, do you think it can influence it? How have you found working with different groups? Do you find that working with certain groups are better than working with others because of the type of people in it, or are we wrong in what we think?
I think it's important to work with a variation of different people because people are people, which means they have different approaches and understandings and theories and beliefs and in their approach to paranormal and stuff like that. I mean, there's some teams that I work with more often simply because I'm friends with them and I could just get involved in a bit more. But I've never stopped. If one group came to me and sort of said, "Did you want to come on an investigation with us?" If I could, I probably would, because I think it's important to try and get yourself out there. And I never like to take a judgmental approach because I don't think you can do that in this field. I think if you take a judgmental approach in this field, you're closing your perception down to what could possibly go on, if that makes sense.
So it's important to say remain open. Yeah. Really is what you're saying. Okay. So Kerry, is there anything you want to add to that?
So we have been in a situation where a team member was able to just shut the location down. I mean, and he did have that ability to do that to the point where at times you'd be like, before you even enter the location, look, come on now, work. Do you know what I mean?
Take it off.
Yeah, get in the mood, let's go. So we have experienced that, and it was quite profound at times how he could manage to do that. So I do think it depends on the group you're with. I do think it depends if you've got a good energy between the people that you're working with. I think that's really important on a team. But that's my opinion.
I think Ashley made a really good point because I have my paranormal profile, which is how I speak with all my little paranormal friends. It's absolutely amazing. The amount of times I've been blown away, and Ashley is usually the one that does it, I'll be honest with you. But I put a little post up a little while ago to say what basically is the key to a successful and happy paranormal team relationship. And you made quite a valid point, didn't you, Ashley?
I think I did actually. I can't remember what it was though. I make a lot of points.
I think a lot of it was to be honest and open.
Yes.
And acknowledge that, and it was about acknowledging that people work differently. And another really good point, which is something I'll be honest, I did struggle with, and Kerry will know this, is that not everyone will take it as seriously as you will. There will be there that's just going for a little bit of a jolly, and that can sometimes not sit right with other members, and it's important just to accept that. So I agree to with what you said there.
What you have to understand is what we do is what we do in the majority, well, for most of us actually, is a hobby of such. So it's something that we're doing outside of our own job in our own time. So for most, it has to be fun, and then that's what I call the ghost hunter concept. So people go in to do this and they're hunting for ghosts and stuff like that. If you want to do a serious paranormal investigation, then you need a team that are seriously going to investigate somewhere and understand that you need to collect data and all that kind of stuff and come out the other end with information that you can put together to say, oh, this has got this, and this. And then beyond that, you've got even more. I mean, I think I heard you talk about people talk about like private investigations and stuff like that. You have to be massively focused if you're going to do a private investigation or residential investigation, because if you do go into one of those situations, you need to be, first of all, honest with yourself that if something gets out and beyond you, or you don't know what's going on, you have to be able to put your hand up and say, I don't know, I'll seek advice from someone I think might know. And you also have to be honest enough to say, I'm going into a situation where I'm taking on someone's house and a private situation. So I think a lot of teams rush into private situations because they see them as active locations right this second and hope for that gem, that what's it called, the ultimate piece of paranormal evidence, because they think because it's a haunted location right this second, they're going to get that photograph, that piece of that video, that piece of audio that's going to prove it. But then they may forget that the most important thing in that investigation isn't actually the activity or paranormal element, it's actually the people that live there.
Yeah, I mean, me and Kerry spoke about this a little bit before her show last night, because it's Kerry Greenaway and Paul Rook last night on Paranormal Concept that spoke about that. And we kind of come to the same conclusion, didn't we, Kerry?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, it's a completely different ball game when you're doing that kind of investigation. It's more of a, like we were talking last night, we were saying it's more of a psychological approach rather than a paranormal approach.
I agree. I mean, me personally, I would never go in and do a paranormal investigation in a home. That's me personally. I don't necessarily agree with them, just because I think to myself, that's a family home. They may have children in the home. You don't know whether, you may come across something. And you're right, actually, it's about being honest with yourself and understanding that maybe you might not be able to deal with it. Because if you don't, and you push yourself, you don't know what you're going to create.
That's exactly right, and also it's one of the reasons why I'm a member of the SPR as well, because I know that if I need that assistance, I've got over 100 years worth of experience in an organisation that's got people across the board, psychologists, the whole lot. I mean, that know what they're doing when it comes to these private investigations, because they've done them on a number of occasions, as well as lots of other friends.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you mentioned SPR, and I've come across this, and I've looked into it a little bit myself on different types of subjects when I've been researching for shows, or if I ever need to find information with what I might be dealing with. But for those that might not have, which is very unlikely, but for those that might not know who they are and what they do, could you explain that a little bit for me, please?
The SPR are the Society for Psychical Research, and they were Frederick Myers and colleagues put the society together back in 1882, so that's how long they've been running. They've been going strong since then. They've investigated mediumship, ghosts, lots of different sort of things. They investigated the skull experiment. They investigated the Enfield haunting. So they predominantly have a lot of information. If you become a member of the SPR as well, you get access to their library. Their library is full of information and books, and it also links into their journal as well. They have a quarterly journal, I think it is, that comes out with all different bits of information in it, which goes back over the 100+ years that they've been running, and that has a plethora of information in it that covers all the investigations and things they do as well. So if you're keen on researching and understanding backgrounds of the paranormal and all the different aspects, that is a massively good resource to be part of, because you've got a plethora of information. I call on it on a number of occasions to get information about stuff.
Firstly, I have to acknowledge that me and Kerry both love that word. We try and get it in every show, so thank you for doing that. And secondly, you mentioned about becoming a part of the society. Now, for someone that is actually intrigued from what you've told and you've explained, how would they go about doing that?
You just go to their website, which I think, if memory serves me well, is spr.ac.uk, and then there's a membership page on there to sign up and become. It's not well. It depends on your. I suppose it depends on your own personal budget, but it's about if memory serves me, it's about 60 quid a year, I think it is. Which okay. And for what you get out of that, you also get a magazine that comes through every quarter and the journal that comes through every quarter. But you also get access to an online library, which has got, like I said, a massive amount of information on there on past cases and stuff like that. I mean, I looked up things like the Philip experiment, skull experiment, the Enfield Hall, and all kinds of stuff through there. And it is an amazing sort of portal of information, if you like.
Fantastic. I mean, those experiments are ones that both me and Kerry both have kind of looked into enjoy, and it is that physical and mediumship as such, and the physical side of things that I really enjoy. So it's definitely what we do as well with for those that are listening, we can put the link into the chat room, and for those that would like to have a look and have a little bit of a insight themselves, then they can go ahead and do that. So I'll put that link in the chat room as well. So. What? With that being said, my next question to you before we have a break is, what is your main fascination or your main interest within the paranormal? Because it's so broad. There is so many different kind of legs, so to speak, that come off of it, and then they kind of branch out themselves. Where is your passion and your focus mainly?
My main focus is actually quite a broad subject in itself when you begin to look into it, but it's the area of telepathy, because I think that the telepathic interaction is key to understanding paranormal events in my mind. I think it helps to explain it. It puts it together quite well, and I've been looking into it, coming up with theories around it. Funnily enough, the founder of the SPR was Frederick Myers, actually coined the word telepathy as well. So it's come from the SPR, if you like, as well. So I find it fascinating how a lot of the stuff that we try to say is outside, maybe external to ourselves, could actually be linked within ourselves. So it could be information that we receive by mind to mind or externally into our own mind, so to speak, via collective consciousness or something like that could then give us that concept. So it's telepathy that's my main focus.
And you do a lot of you've done experiments yourself within that, which we will talk a little bit later, and you've kind of really got looked into this quite a bit, as well as some of the experiments and the cases that are kind of underneath that topic as such, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And you mentioned, did you say Frederick Myers? Sorry,
Frederick Myers. Yeah.
Yeah. And could you tell me a little bit about him?
Basically, he's one of three guys who actually founded the SPR. And what fascinated me about him in particular as well is because he wrote a huge book on the paranormal, which is about 1,000 pages long. It's actually 2 volumes. It's that big. And this covers all kinds of topics and touches on telepathy and stuff like that. It covers the concept of what happens to the consciousness post mortem. So after people die, what happens to consciousness after that? So he tries to cover that, and in that he's got the word telepathy that he's obviously coined as well, and all that kind of stuff as part of the concept. And he wrote this book before he died, early 1900s, but it was actually published after he died. And what's interesting about Frederick Myers is after he died, he pops up a few times in history. One of the times he pops up is during something called the cross correspondence, which is when a load of mediums across the world picked up a lot of information, and it became basically some correspondence that, when you put it together, makes one big message. So he came up in that. He actually came up in the skull experiment as well, as a possible contact as well. And he also popped up somewhere else. I think some other guy picked up on him as well. And I think actually wrote a whole book based on his communication psychically with Frederick Myers post-mortem. So wow. It's almost as like this guy who helped put together the SPR is still trying from the other side, if you believe that, to contact and communicate and put that information across. So that's why he's like my hero.
I love that. Oh, well, he's still working from the other side then to try and put into place the work that he's achieved so far. So that's really fascinating. And to know that still continues, and whether you believe in that or not, it is still quite, fascinating. But with that being said, we're going to go for a short break, and we will be back after that.
You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
Join Kerry Greenaway and Jay Lynch for the Parasearch UK radio show as they share their paranormal news, views and reviews from the UK and the USA with the help of guests from both sides of the pond. Will they agree or agree to disagree? Find out every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, right here on Paramania Radio. You're listening to Seventh Sanctum with Kerry Ann, only on Parasearch UK Radio.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Kerry Ann. You're listening to Seventh Sanctum and we're on Parasearch UK Radio, and I'm being joined tonight by my lovely Kerry.
Hello.
And we are, sorry Kerry, speaking over you. And we are interviewing and speaking to this evening Ashley Knibbs. So welcome back, Ashley.
Hiya.
So with everything that we've been speaking about so far, Kerry, is there anything that you would like to know a little bit more information about, or any questions you'd like to ask?
Hundreds of questions, to be fair. But well, to be fair, it's a lot more to do with the experiment side of things, which I know you're going to go into. So we'll keep going.
Okay, no, that's fine. I mean, the first place that I would really like to start is, I mean, again, like I said, I had a good mosey through your website, and that is a link that we're going to be sharing in the chat room and on the like page, Parasearch UK Radio like page and group. So you can have a look yourself, because honestly, there is so much information here and insight. It's really fascinating. But there was two particular experiments that I really enjoyed reading about and really was fascinated with. The first one is one that you was part of yourself, and the other one is the skulls experiment, which is what you've looked quite heavily into and you've done a YouTube video about, and I'm looking forward to speaking about. But the first one is the one that you was part of, which you did this experiment called the psychic projection experiment with Brian Kano, isn't it? And you was at Fort Horsted, is that right? That's
right. Fort Horsted, part of the Sage team's D-Day tour. Brian Kano done what's called the psychic projection experiment, which basically means you take a digital recorder and you place it in front of him. It's his digital recorder. And we came up with a word amongst the group that we was going to project onto that digital recorder. On that particular occasion, it was Gollum from Lord of the Rings, because a chunk of the group had been talking a lot about Lord of the Rings. So we said, well, there's obviously a link in there. So it's like a tie, so to speak, psychologically, if you like. So we all spent a minute, nothing more, 60 seconds, focusing on the word Gollum and in our mind's eye projecting that onto his digital recorder. After the 60 seconds, you don't stop or tag or anything. We stopped, took a breather because everyone had been quiet so long. It seems like forever, funnily enough. And then he played it back. There was 3 occasions, I believe, where people believed they heard the word Gollum. The most clearest that I heard it as well was at about the 50-second mark. And interestingly enough, MJ from Sage Paranormal, who was sat close to him in the same vicinity, actually I think picked it up on her recorder as well. So it's not so specifically the recorder itself, it was like almost the area that it was. But we had other digital recorders going on around the table and none of them picked it up. So it was like locality was important as well. So it's like we was actually projecting it into that position, that place. And I found this experiment, not my experiment, his experiment obviously, I found this fascinating because it raises a lot of philosophical questions around paranormal. Because it's we do a lot of EVPs in our investigations, but then what kind of pops into my head is, what if we're asking all these questions and when our unconscious mind is then projecting our answers onto the digital recorders, that might be how, if you like, I don't know, the answers might be projected from our own minds rather than from a ghost, if you like. So I then took that and put it on my website with Brian's permission, asking people to email me if they do the experiment with their results, because I'm trying to put together an understanding of how often it works, how often it doesn't work, to try and understand whether it works within a certain amount of chance or anything like that, but also to understand a bit more about the circumstances when it does work as well, what kind of words are chosen, where people are, how many are in the group, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the nutshell.
I found that fascinating.
You've actually outlined how to be able to do that experiment as well on the actual website, isn't it?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I put it on my website so everyone can follow it and do it themselves.
So you only did this once? Sorry, we're now talking over each other. Sorry, Kerry. Carry on.
No. Carry on, Kerry. Sorry.
So you only did it once? You only tried it once on the night?
On the night, we only tried it once and it worked. I asked Brian straight off the bat there, because being me, I said, does this always work then when you do this? And he turned around and he said, no, not often. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it doesn't work. So it's not one of those things that happens all the time. But we only had time to do it once, obviously, because when you're on a location, you want to get the most out of it.
Yeah.
But it just fascinated me straight away, because it presented a question that around the whole EVP scenario.
It does, doesn't it? I wonder if it's to do with strength of mind.
Possibly. Like I said, the word we chose that night was directly related to something that a group of them had been talking about quite often that day. And obviously it was something that was a happy memory and stuff like that, if you like, as well. So it had a good trigger, which I think is important as well.
I'd like to try that experiment.
Do you know what? I want to as well, Kerry.
I'm not surprised. Because you do love a little experiment, don't you?
I love an experiment. Especially with you.
Wow.
I think...
that sounded a little bit weird.
It was meant to sound a little bit weird. Just putting that out there.
That's fine then.
I think we should get together, maybe just me and you, and try this ourselves. Seeing if maybe just two people, we both work on an energy level on our own, see if we're able to create, results.
One thing I would like to put out there about that experiment is you don't have to be at a haunted location to do it. You can do it from your living room. So it's not an experiment that requires a haunted location or a massive group of people. It could be, you can have one person in your living room trying it, all the way up to 10 people at a haunted location if you really want to. It doesn't matter where you are or how many there are of you. You just give it a go. Okay,
so that's going to be me, you and Daisy around the witch table.
Wow, and we'll got to get around the witch table.
We'll have to, and we'll let Ashley know how we get on. Maybe even speak to him afterwards on Skype and kind of, see. And we'll share our our results afterwards with those that are listening. And we'd encourage you to do the same. If you're out on an investigation or you fancy just doing it at home, the method of how to do this is all on Ashley Knibbs. Sorry, I keep saying Knibbs. Do apologise, Ashley. On his website. We are going to share the link, so have a look, see what you need and see what you want to do, and kind of go from there and share what your experience with it and your results. So with that, I want to, because I could talk all night about this. I'm super aware of time, but I wanted to speak a little bit, because what I found really fascinating was you have a YouTube channel, isn't it?
Yeah, I've just started a YouTube channel, so I've got some bits and pieces on there.
Well, I come across your YouTube channel, and I didn't actually. I come across the page of your website when I searched Skulls Experiment, and it was the first suggested link that come up, and on there is a YouTube video, which is what I watched, and it was your take and your impression of the Skulls Experiment. So, would you be able to give us a little bit of insight of what that is?
The Skull Experiment is a physical mediumship experiment a physical trance mediumship experiment, I suppose, that occurred in the 90s up in Norfolk in a place called Skull. It's not to do with head skulls or anything like that. And basically a group of four, which were two groups of husband and wife, basically. So Robin Foy and his wife and another couple as well. They created in their home, in Robin Foy's home, in the basement, what they called the Skull Hole, which is basically a room that had no light entering it, and they painted it dark. So actually, it was pitch black room. And in this, they held what you'd associate to be seances, whether they would do physical mediumship. What's important to note about this experiment is it's not something that happened overnight. It happened over the course of 5+ years. They've done 500+ sittings to do this as well. So it's not something that was like an easy thing, or some. And it's not they've done it 2 or 3 times and got amazing results. They've done it a lot, to be fair. And in that experiment, they contacted what they called the spirit team on the other side, so to speak. And that team then guided them into doing certain things to do with physical mediumship. They had 100+ apports arrive during the time that they done their experiments. They done experiments with photographic film, where they managed to have blank unopened film in a in a container on the table, and then during the course of the session, it would be psychically projected on by the spirit team, and then when they sort of like developed it afterwards, it would have symbols, words, and all kinds of stuff on it. They got through on that a design for what they call the TDC, which is a transdimensional communication device, which was signed by who was it signed by? The guy that invented the light bulb, whose name escapes me all of a sudden.
Isn't it?
Edison. Edison, that's it. Thank you.
I paid attention.
Paid attention, good work. And that was his signature was confirmed with the Thomas Edison Museum in America to prove that it was the right signature. They had all kinds of different things come through on the film. Also, that's where Frederick Myers ties back in again, because they had some bits and pieces come through that linked directly to him on the film. They had a significant apport. They had, because I know we were talking about it earlier, they had a newspaper arrive that came from about the 1940s that had a link to Helen Duncan on it. But the newspaper, when it arrived, was in pristine, brand spanking new condition. The SPR tested this newspaper with experts and found out that the print type and ink that was used would have been for around 1940s. So it was they considered it to be genuine. So it is categorically probably some of the most profound, what you might call evidence of physical mediumship and paranormal that I've ever read about. And I've read the book that Robin Foy and that have put together, so their perspective. But I've also read the book that was from the proceedings of the SPR, which is basically three of the SPR members investigated this on a regular basis, and they wrote up a huge report on it as well to put to other people, and then that was reviewed again and again by the SPR, because that's what they do. So if you don't know anything about the Sky Experiment and you're into the paranormal, it's something you need to read about at the end of the day, I think.
I agree with you there. I saw the documentary on that, and I was literally blown away by the documentary that I watched on it. It was fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Is that the Afterlife Investigations?
I don't know. It was a documentary.
That's the best. Yeah, the Afterlife Investigations is a good documentary on it. Basically, that gives you a lot of information.
It was very detailed. I can remember that.
I'll be honest. The only time I've really had a real, and this is going to sound really, I'm a bit embarrassed to say, but there was a film based on it, and I watched the film. I mean, it kind of followed the basics of the Skulls Experiment, but there was a film that had come from that, and that's what I'd watched, and that's really where I first become aware of it. Neither of you watched it? No?
Not the film. I saw the documentary.
Yeah, I saw the documentary, not the film.
That's the difference between me and you two.
I can't remember, but how long was it from when they started the experiment to they started getting activity? How long was the? It wasn't. It was a few months, wasn't it?
Yeah, because it originally began with a larger team. The Skull team was originally a larger team. I think it might have even been like 7 or 8 people involved. But then that kind of whittled down, and when it got to the 4 of them, then after a while of it just being the 4 of them, it then became more intimate. But at the same time, they nailed down the process in order to get it to work. Because they don't just sit down there and go, right, we're going to communicate. There's a whole process, because Robin Foy sent me as a whole process and how they start each and every one of their sessions as well, like with music and guided meditation and all that kind of stuff as well. There's a huge process around it that allows them to do what they do. They don't just tap in all of a sudden. It's not quite as straightforward as what a lot of people think.
No, it's not. No.
Things usually are rarely that straightforward.
No.
No, there is a bit. I mean, just from I've done a little bit of trance, and just from sitting in a trance circle, I know it's not something you could just step into. There is a bit of a process to do. So I can imagine that the prep for something like this is immense, but still, it's very fascinating to see how. I think what it also does, it gives an insight into how things may work on a different perspective, on a different level. In paranormal, in regards to paranormal investigations and stuff like that, this is just another kind of perspective of doing, gathering research and evidence, but and in a scientific way as such, but without the, the equipment and stuff like. I'm so sorry. Hear a phone ringing in the background.
No,
Sorry, carry on.
I think that the thing that caught me as well was although it was an experiment in physical trance mediumship, they approached it with a very scientific viewpoint. They recorded all the sessions, they documented all the sessions, and they made reference to them, and they started to get results stuff. That's when they brought the SPR on board and all that kind of stuff, and talked to them about it, and wanted them to investigate it and be as stringent as possible and all that kind of stuff. So they approached it quite scientifically, if you like, as well. And also when you read about the spirit team on the other side, they also come across quite scientific as well, and the experiments they ran, the photographic experiments, the audio experiments that the spirit team sort of ran with them as well. So it becomes a fascinating. It really is. It's a fascinating sort of case study because it's a long one.
Yeah.
But it covers a lot of information if you believe it, of course.
Well, there is that. I mean, they even allowed people to sit in on some of their sessions, didn't they?
They did. They had people come down to the Skull Hole and sit on those sessions, but they also managed to take it abroad as well. They've done sessions in Ibiza, I think, if I'm right, and also in America as well at some point. So it's been it's been around the world a little bit too.
Yeah.
And they've also had some quite prominent people sit on them as well. So it's a interesting case.
And they even had magicians come and check things to see if there was any way they could fake it or something like that. They really did try and cover every base, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
They had magicians and experts and all kinds of people come in and check it out and see if they could debunk it and stuff like that. And it didn't really get that well debunked, let's put it that way.
No.
With talking about debunking, with going alongside the Skulls experiment, there is a similar experiment that happened, years and years and years ago, called the Philip experiment, which has come across a lot of criticism. Obviously, we'd spoken about this previously, just the time and the kind of tricks that they did to create activity as such. But the Philip experiment kind of run a lot parallel to one another, almost, isn't it? The basics are there in the sense of, actually, no, I suppose not, actually. But the Philip experiment was the manifestation of creating something from nothing, wasn't it?
Yeah, the concept of the Philip experiment, which is, I think, by a group in Toronto, Canada, in the 70s. They basically, the concept was to create a character, Philip, who was from, I think, the 1200s or something like that, or 1600s or something like that. They gave him a backstory and all this kind of stuff, and they then set up a group and then communicated with him and all that kind of stuff. And then and it moved on to physical mediumship. And I think they displayed it on TV at one point as well, where they were, where they literally had a table sort of like levitating and moving around the stage and all this kind of stuff. So I think where it gained criticism was the fact because they made it too public in that respect. And I think this is what happens a lot in this field as well. If you take something like that and you make it too public too quickly and you put it into a very media-driven situation, people will straight away think that it's not real for the simple fact that they see a financial reward might come out of it, and they see that there might be people might be receiving fame and fortune out of the back end, and it's like they don't want to. If you put something on TV, they think that people are looking for fame out of the back of it, in which case they don't think that it loses its credibility as an experiment, if you like. Whereas
I agree with that.
If they kept it a little bit more under wraps and sort of studied it a bit better, because I think it was actually run by a psychologist or a doctor or a scientist of some kind anyway.
Yes.
Memory doesn't remind me who he is, but so they kind of approached that quite similarly. But I don't think it ran as long as the skull experiment, and I don't think they got anywhere near as much activity, physical mediumship type activity as they did in the skull experiment either.
I think with the Philip experiment, it was mostly tapping and there was the movement of the table and stuff like that. Yeah, as far as evidence went. But I think the standpoint as well from the two experiments, they tried to prove, from my opinion, I could be wrong, two different things. So with the Philip experiment is more of a case of proving that spirits and ghosts don't exist, but they're a manifestation, the product of ourself and our ability to manifest things that are able to take on their own personality, where from the skulls experiment, from what I've learned and what I've read, that's not so much the case.
No, that's right. Yeah, the Philip experiment was an approach to try and prove that you could create something out of you could create something from the product of your mind, and you could communicate with something that was basically a generation of the imagination. Whereas with the skull experiment, the belief and faith was that they were communicating with spirits, and they were from a spirit team on the other side, and that constant belief in that scenario was always there. But then the problem I see with that is the fact that because I've heard criticism of the Philip experiment where they say, oh yeah, but they may have intentionally tried to go and connect with this Philip character, but what they might have got is they may have got an entity pretending to be that, is what you get from some believers. But then you'd also get from other people going, oh, they probably faked it themselves anyway. And so then, and the same thing happens with skulls. You get, you can talk to one person, they'll be like, oh wow, yeah, that's an amazing experiment. I've heard of that, and it's amazing. And you talk to the next person, they'll be like, yeah, they faked it. It was fraud. Everyone knows that. And it's like, well, they don't, because it's it's not quite as simple as that. And and I think belief and faith come into the concept of the communication as it happens anyway. So it can either be a product of that belief or faith. So if you believe you're communicating with spirits, then you're probably going to be communicating with spirits because that's your belief point. But if you are scientific and you believe that you're communicating with the minds of others and you're still as successful as what people that communicate to spirits are, then you're still believing what you're believing in. If that makes kind of sense.
Yeah, no, it does. No, it does. Well, thank you so much for talking about those. I mean, like I said, that your website itself is absolutely fascinating. There's loads more cases in there, from criminal to telepathy. Sorry, and so much more. That was a high five to me. I'm achieved. The fact that I achieved that word is amazing. But what I would really like to do before we end the show is learn a little bit about yourself and your personal experiences in what you do today. So when we done the show last week, I made reference to a conference that wasn't a conference. Sorry. Which you done a demonstration, wasn't it? How did that go?
I've done a talk at a bookshop, which went okay, yeah, and it's kind of what I do every now and then. I'll go and like a convention or something like that. I'll do a talk, and usually I focus around telepathic interaction, which is kind of my field, my focus point, as we said earlier. Because I like to try and my concept isn't to say I'm right and you're wrong. My approach is to sort of say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about it this way, sort of thing? And my telepathic interaction sort of point of view is sort of like, okay, there may be a possibility that we're talking to spirits and ghosts, and consciousness may survive death, but there's also a possibility that the information that we pick up in multiple different scenarios may actually be information that we're receiving telepathically from other members of other people in our team or people from other places, and it could be the environment or items that in our environment that trigger that communication, and that's that telepathic interaction, and that's usually what I talk about at these talks and stuff like that.
Okay, so have you got any more talks or anything coming up this year?
I haven't got anything coming up just yet, no.
But if you do, it'd be on your website, wouldn't it? Yeah,
I always put it on my website on ashleynibbs.com. It's always on there when something's coming up. So yeah, keep an eye on that.
Okay, so I asked you a previous question before. I love to do like a little bit of a pre-interview chat, and I done that this morning with you at 7 o'clock this morning. Apologise for that. And one of the things I asked you was where has been the best place that you've investigated? And your answer to me was Royal Oak in Swanage. So would you be able to tell me a little bit about that and why that is somewhere that you enjoyed?
Yeah, because it's my mindset probably on it is probably a little bit different from some people. When I say the best place to investigate, it's not because it's got like 100 million ghosts or something like that and everything always happens there. It's because when I went there, my perspective on the paranormal changed. Because the first time I visited there was probably back in 2010, and back then I was what I call a ghost hunter. Whereas you go to a location and look to debunk as much as possible. But so I went into that location looking to debunk all the stuff that they told me went on there, and I came away with a whole new perspective on the paranormal because at one point during the investigation I sat in a loft, which is now the landlady's bedroom. I sat there with a resident who lived in the pub, and basically between the two of us we put my grandfather's pocket watch as a trigger object, and I just called out and I kind of said, right, if there's any spirits with us, in my usual layman's kind of back then, nothing's going to happen sort of mood. If there's any spirits with us, can you move the pocket watch? Thinking that what I was asking them to do was to move the pocket watch across the floor so you'd see it magically move across the floor. We sat there, the pocket watch didn't move, but then about 5-10 minutes later, we became aware of a ticking, ticking like the pocket watch was like moving. And it's probably important to notice that the pocket watch wasn't wound when I put it down; it had stopped. So we looked at the watch and it was actually going. So that it was as if it had been wound. So it was going and it went for another 20 minutes. Me being me, spent the next 3 months trying to disprove that, and still to this day I can't disprove it. It literally, and that changed my whole perception because it was a perception thing. I asked if there's any spirits there to move the pocket watch. They did exactly that, but they didn't do exactly what I thought they were going to do. If that makes sense. Yeah. If they were spirits, no. or it could have been the other. See, this is where it gets into a different whole concept as well. It might have been power of spirit, but it also could have been power of mind. So it could have been PK, it could have been psychokinesis. So us wanting the watch to move, our focused minds could have made that watch move through our own minds using psychokinesis. So there's two possibilities, if you like. Either there were spirits there and they listened and they moved the watch by making it turn on and wind and then ticked for like 20 minutes. Or because the two of us were sat there focusing on that, trying to get that to happen, our minds actually made it work itself.
Can I play devil's advocate on this point?
Go on then.
Because if you're focused on it moving, your focus was on it actually moving, not running. So telekinesis, if you're going by what your mindset was, surely then the whole watch should have moved rather than it just starts running. If you think it's telekinesis, because it would go. Wouldn't it, I could be really sounding like an idiot here, but wouldn't it move in the way you was expecting it to rather than the way it did?
Yeah, but we weren't consciously thinking that. So if it was our unconscious mind trying to do what it could, then it could have just done that anyway. Or if you were going to a whole energy kind of element of it, which I'm not a massive advocate of, but it could be, the energy of us wanting that to happen could have created the energy for the watch to move itself and wind or whatever. So there's different possibilities. I mean, and I think what the point that I got out of it when back then was the fact that perception is an important thing. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't straight away think, oh my god, that watch moved, it must be spirits. For me, it was that watch moved, there must be a reason why it moved. What's the reason? And if you can't understand what the reason is, you can't just say it was spirits. You have to try and find. You kind of have to rule everything out before you go, oh, it was spirits. And I can't rule out psychokinesis. I can't rule out some kind of energy that we created in order to make it work. So, and because I can't explain those two things, so in my mind it's like there's possibilities, but there's not one possibility, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's why I love the Royal Oak so much, because my perception is constantly adjusted there. And that whole concept of is it mind or is it spirit came up several times. We've done seances down there as well, and we sat around in the bar area, a group of us doing an investigation, and we put a bottle on the table and we said, right, if there's the same sort of thing again, actually, we said, if there's any spirits in here, move the bottle across the table. And one of the mediums just turned around and said, is it the power? Are you asking us to move it via power of mind or power of spirit? And I was just like, it's almost as if they were tapped into what I was thinking in the back end of my mind as well. So it's like there's a lot of perception conflict that goes on there that makes me think a bit more. And because of that, and it's also, we've done a hell of a lot of strange work down there to do with physical mediumship, trance mediumship as well, which is something that I, after changing my perception, kind of like started looking into as well. And I've also witnessed, I was saying to Kerry earlier, I've also witnessed like a disembodied arm there, and I've seen things, seen things that I probably shouldn't have seen and things like that, and tried different things beyond the norm. So it's quite a fascinating place. It's also it's also the only pub that I know that's also a spiritualist centre.
Oh really?
It is, yeah. It's called.
Then, do you know what? And just from that, and for the spiritualist centre, they do physical mediumship there.
Yes.
So, couldn't it? Could that all that energy that I know you don't work, you're not a biggest advocate of energy, but from my perspective, if that was a place where someone was doing physical medium, especially, that's immense. So there would be that residual left behind. So I know that's not something you particularly, think.
It's possibly I'm not close to it.
Dismissing it, no.
No,
it'd be like a little powerhouse.
It is a little powerhouse, and it's. I find it fascinating because before I started investigating that place, I wasn't a massive the spiritual side of things. I was a bit disconnected with, and didn't really. I was more science and sort of like, you must look at the science and all this kind of stuff. And then that's kind of what sparked my interest in like the mediumship side of things and that kind of stuff. And it's remarkable because I've invited mediums to go there, and they've gone there, and literally as they've walked through the door, they've gone, my God, this place has got so much energy, and it's like I've actually had mediums turn around and go, this is a medium's dream in like the first 5-10 minutes that they've been there. And it's like, okay, so I wish I could understand what you're talking about because I'm not a medium, but they pick up things, they link. Yeah, if you're into mediumship, you should go. You should definitely go.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a fantastic place for that. It is amazing.
Well, we have to end the show, but I want to, and probably the hardest question, or may not be, that I'm going to ask you this evening, and I think it'd be a good place to finish, is do you believe in ghosts?
If you can tell me what a ghost is, then I'll tell you whether I believe in it or not.
Oh, I see. Okay. We just leave it there. I haven't got the answer I need. But thank you so much for joining me this evening, and thank you so much for giving us an insight into the world that is Ashley Knibbs. It's been really fascinating. And again, we'll share all the information in the chat room, as well as the like page and the page with Parasearch UK Radio. Ashley actually has his own radio show as well, which goes out on Thursday.
Sorry. It goes out once a month though, so you're all right.
Yes, I'm all right. But your show is called The Ghost Frequency, isn't it?
It's called Ghost Frequency, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if he does it on a pre-record, I suggest you go and listen to it, but not live, because I'm live and this is where you need to be.
You can listen. You can listen back on mine, iTunes.
That's it, podcast. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Oh, yeah.
But thank you so much, Kerry Greenaway, for joining me. I've robbed you again for another one of my evenings. I do enjoy doing a show with you, though.
I enjoy doing it with you too, darling. So it's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me again.
Oh, you're welcome. You're most definitely my second favourite Kerry in the world.
And you're mine. That's a little love fest going on.
So with that, I'm going to say good night, everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Good night. Thank you.
You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.